On episode 7 of the podcast, we have the man behind the FollyHood name. Justin Morris shares tales from the water, his process, and the journey into photography. He has dedicated more than a decade of documenting around the shores of Folly Beach and abroad. Many memorable moments have been captured by him, and I know lots of people have him to thank for their best surf photo. But it doesn't stop there. He is generously offering 25% off of his print shop for our listeners. The link is in his bio on Instagram, and we will link it in our description as well. The code is 96WAVE. That's spelled out 96WAVE. As he explains later in the podcast, there's something super special about a photo that is printed out. You can see it, feel, and appreciate it for years to come. Now would be the time to get a print for your office, your home, or as a gift. That's 25% off. In the coming days, we are also going to be doing a giveaway, so keep your eyes peeled on our Instagram page for that. I'd really like to thank our sponsors, Hurriali and Marshwear, for making this episode possible. Enjoy. This episode is brought to you by Hurriali, serving nourishing treats for the mind, body, and soul. If you haven't heard the recent podcast, give it a listen. Learn the story of how they built Hurriali Gardens. It's a great story, and I did not know half of it. It's definitely our spot before or after a surf for a fresh juice, strong coffee, or fire a breakfast burrito. And my new favorite is their healthy take on a banh mi. Hurriali Gardens, 401 Hugie Street, or their new location, Hurriali Riverland in James Island at 2016 Wapu Drive.
Marshwear. Clothing inspired by the need for versatility and style. For those wave chasing, flats pulling, field loving, campfire gatherers. For the doers, adventurers, and unconventional. For those who live by the highs and lows of the tides. For those in pursuit of good times.
First, I feel like we were filming for our movie Waves in Our Pocket in like 2010, and Mike Cassidy was doing a lot of photos back then, and I feel like that's kind of when you were first getting started and we probably met each other.
Yep.
Is that when?
So that was when I was working at a hotel downtown, and that was when Mike was doing his blog, and we were both working valet at a hotel. And I was kind of interested in photography, and I was interested in doing surf photography that he was doing, and I would just kind of sit there on slower nights and pick his brain about, like, what do I need? What is this? I mean, this is like super elementary stuff. I have never taken a photography class. I'm like totally self-taught, and this was probably the start of it. So I would basically pick his brain every night, ask him questions like what does this even mean when I'm trying to buy a lens? So I just bought like a super basic Nikon, like a, gosh, I don't remember, like a D7000, something older. And yeah, basically just started shooting surf. And that was when I started FollyHood.blogspot.com. That's kind of where FollyHood came from. Again, I kind of have no idea how I thought of that. Just some late night at the hotel, Folly neighborhood, some mashup of that. And that's where that came from. But yeah, so we were both kind of just doing the blogs, and I was just shooting just from the beach at that point too. But yeah, just kind of, that was my introduction to photography and surf photography. And yeah, just kind of picking Mike's brain too about any little question I had.
Blogs were awesome because it did give you an outlet to be able to post to, you know, and obviously Instagram now is that outlet first probably, but blogs were, because you had your core commenters that would,
yeah,
you know.
And I honestly, on the blog, I would post a lot more than I do now. I'm definitely trying to pick the best and quality over the blog, where I would just go out and shoot. And on like hurricanes and busy days, good days of surf, I can take thousands of photos. And yeah, just like I would throw a lot more photos and be a little looser with what I'm putting up there. Whereas nowadays on Instagram and that kind of stuff that I'm sharing, I want the best photos.
Yeah, I was thinking about you. It's pretty impressive that you can, because your grid on Instagram looks beautiful, but after a day of shooting that you can select one image, like that's hard.
It's tough. And I don't know. I try to mix up a little bit, but honestly, I also try to not overthink it because it kind of drive yourself crazy. And social media is can be stupid sometimes.
Yeah, it does. Like, it all really doesn't matter.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter. In photos that I think are cool, no one else thinks are cool, and then I'll post whatever photo that like blows up for whatever reason, or everyone's sharing it, and yeah, I don't fully understand it, and I don't try to.
Yeah, but then we were talking about how like the archive that you have now, that's what's cool to have, because yeah, you post a photo that no one cares about, but then 5 years later, it's really an interesting photo.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about it, and that's kind of my theory a lot in photography too, like things that seem pretty, every day or whatever, I take a photo that you don't think about, but 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road is when those things, it's kind of, you're documenting history, but at the time you're just shooting whatever's going on that day. And yeah, over time it kind of evolves into, I guess, history.
Yeah. In Charleston, there's always been photographers that shoot surfing, because surfing's, it's really aesthetic and pleasing. And there's always been photographers that stick around. Sometimes they leave. It seems like you've been in that spot for a while. Yeah. But were there other photographers that inspired you locally?
So I looked up to Mike, obviously, a lot when I first started to shoot. And this is also when Nancy was running Folly Waves. So I definitely was on her site. And then I know Jim Whitney was around. I know he came through a lot. Yeah, so I kind of looked up to him and definitely asked him some things if I had specific questions or stuff like that. But yeah, I feel like those were probably the names and people that I thought of most when I first started shooting locally. And then other guys like Matt Lusk and Daniel Poland, those guys up in North Carolina, I really looked up to. And I still look up to them. I know Matt seems like he's doing some more fishing stuff, but Daniel, I think, is an awesome kind of just person who's documenting the Outer Banks on like an everyday level. And I think that's really cool. Not only just surf, but like lifestyle and culture and all that other stuff too.
Yeah, both of those guys shoot heavy water. I've seen them in heavy conditions, which is epic. And then yeah, their documenting of where they live is like, that's going to be really important for the next generation. Yeah, that they have all those photos in the archive.
Yeah, and I think everyone is like me taking photos around here, someone else down in Florida, someone North Carolina. Again, it's just everyone's kind of, as a photographer, y'all know this too, you're just kind of documenting what's around you. And yeah, over time you have more and more stuff, and yeah, you're just kind of documenting history.
Yeah, Jim Whitney, he actually, that was because when we made that first movie, we were amateurs, and he was the first person to tell me, he's like, yeah, your stuff looks good, but straighten your horizon. Yeah. And I was like, I didn't even think of that before then, and it literally sticks with me to this day that he told me that, whether I'm shooting photos or video, of like setting a frame.
Yeah, that's definitely the first thing you learn if you're shooting surf. And I'm not sure if he told me or someone else did, but nowadays I can see if I see surf photos with like an uneven horizon, it like kind of gets to you.
And there's a horizon in every surf shot.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you see like a sideways or like a 45 degree, even if like the photo could work in the water, it's a little tougher. But like if it would work at that angle, it's just really tough to have the horizon in the background. Like it's at a weird angle.
What brought you to Charleston? When did you first start surfing?
So I moved to Charleston in 2004, and I grew up in Florida, the Tampa Bay area. And then I wanted to go to College of Charleston to play baseball. I was actually going to college to play baseball, but I ended up going to App State up in North Carolina in Boone, and went up there to play. I hated it. I was pretty miserable. It was very intense, and so I thought I would apply to College of Charleston and see what happens, and I got in, which I probably wouldn't have gotten in out of high school. But yeah, so I moved to Charleston around then, and went to College of Charleston. I had one of my first buddies I made here who was from Columbia, or right outside of Columbia, was really into surfing and fishing around here. So I kind of just started going out to the beach with him, and that was my introduction to like surfing around here, because where I grew up, there is surfing. I grew up right by where the Lopez brothers grew up, like Indian Rocks Beach, but I had friends that wakeboarded a lot, and surfing just never seemed like an option on the Gulf Coast, because I know that we complain about like it being flat and a bad place to surf here, but it's way worse over there. But yeah, so I came to Charleston, and just started surfing slowly, and I don't know, I didn't rush anything to get into the scene. I just kind of did it at my own speed, and throughout time just kind of met more people and somehow got put in the scene.
Yeah. Well, that's because you give back to the community of like, and that's like important. You can't just come in, take waves and like, if you give back, then that's a cool part.
Yeah.
Of any community. Your surfing life now, say there's waves, what time do you try to spend? Because taking a really good photo and capturing like that can give you an adrenaline rush, especially shooting in the water. But are there some days you'd just rather surf?
Yes, there honestly isn't a real rhyme or reason. I always say that I'll surf when the waves are shitty, and then I'll shoot when they're good, but that's not totally true. I really have grown to enjoy longboarding, so I don't mind like a lot of days, if it's thigh, stomach high and clean, and I can longboard, like I'm pretty content there. And then, when we get proper hurricane or some kind of swell, especially if it's a little bit bigger or barreling or overhead, that's when I definitely enjoy being in the water and shooting. But yeah, there's kind of no rhyme or reason. It's just whatever I'm feeling that day. Some days I'll be selfish and just want to go surf and not deal with mainly like certain areas of Folly Beach that can be very crowded. And I just am over it, especially sometimes in the summer, sometimes on the weekend, where it's just I don't even want to mess with somewhere busy. But yeah, there's kind of no rhyme or reason. And then I also prefer to shoot early or late. I don't love shooting like at noon on a summer day. If it's sunny, like that light isn't that dynamic or like that pretty for me. So I'd prefer to shoot in better light. And I think that definitely makes a good photo that much better.
Yeah. One way I know that this really is your passion is I'll see you on a freezing cold winter day, all suited up, hood, everything, going out to shoot water, no one around, and the waves are thigh high.
Yeah. So, spoiler, in the winter, we get really good glassy sunsets, and the direction of the sun is really nice too for the light. So I feel like summer we really don't get. The wind is rarely like offshore at sunset, but in the winter and the fall, a lot of times we get that good like frontlit wave. And if you can get like the low tide where it's barreling frontlit, yeah, that's kind of what I look for, and that just so happens to be a lot of cold nights. But honestly, I got a really warm wetsuit. Actually, this is a while ago. A hooded 5.5 mil, which is crazy for here. That's like what dudes in New Jersey and like New York and up there are using. So I don't know, but I love it, and I'd rather be warm than cold. And yeah, I'd look forward to those nights where it's just me alone on the beach, like whether it's November, January, February, or whenever. I just look for those conditions.
Yeah, fully disconnected from the world kind of feeling, like therapy.
Yeah, and again, like that also came just from shooting surf and shooting out the water, and there's not. There's only so many days of the year that we can shoot surf around here. So, just seeing these pretty waves and seeing light hit waves and stuff like that, that definitely morphed into a whole nother world for me, where I'm creating images to basically that people want to put on their wall. And yeah, so a lot of times I'm just looking for like that specific shot or trying to get it.
I feel like those images probably are like the sickest to have on your wall. All those you can buy prints of?
Yeah. Yeah. So when the blogspot thing, when I decided to actually make FollyHood.com, that's basically to showcase my work for, other kinds of work that I'm getting, but I also do have my print shop. And one of my favorite things and things that I enjoy most about photography, honestly, is seeing my own art and images on people's walls. And that can be like an empty wave, or it could be a pretty sunset with a wave, something like that, where, I'm just trying to create an image that looks good on a wall, especially big, because bigger is better. I know it sounds crazy, but I don't know if you've never printed a photo. Anyone out there? You can sit there and look at a photo on your phone forever, but like to be able to hold it and be able to frame it and be able to do whatever is a whole different experience. And it's something that I've really grown to love, to be able to sell photos to people that, they can put up on their wall. And I get a lot of people who have it and they say, whether it's like a relaxing ocean or like a day that they remember pumping surf or something, it's just kind of a little quick, like you pass by and it gives you that like tiny bit of like enjoyment, which is really cool.
That shot up there, me, Ellison, and William, and then William made that custom frame, and then gave it to us as a gift. And that's, like you're saying, like what a cool moment.
Yeah. And again, like that also goes back to like just kind of going out and shooting. And I know definitely I can talk myself out of shooting sometimes for whatever reason. Like the waves aren't good enough. It's not whatever. It's cloudy. It's too sunny. But like honestly, you just kind of have to go sometimes and go out a lot. And you never know what you're gonna get. Like
yeah, that day the weather changed like 10 times in an hour, and then that looks like a crazy storm, and then it was a sunset right after. Yeah. But I remember that day, and then now I can really remember it.
Yeah.
That photo.
Yeah. Again, it's like, whether it's a pretty photo that is just enjoyable to look at, or a certain day or a certain storm, or, even I've sold a lot of prints of, I think y'all were out there that day, but it was on 420 for COVID.
Yeah.
And it was like, you roll up to the washout, and the shape was really good. The size wasn't like anything too crazy. It was like chest high and kind of A-frames. But I was like, I'm going to roll back and step on this house and go back and get like a different angle. And I got the shot like pulled back of the washout, where it's basically like an A-frame little tube. And then there's not one car at the washout. And it was like clearly middle of the day, like bright sunshine. So that's kind of a funny shot too. It sticks out where, again, like if you don't understand our dynamic and Charleston surf and folly surf scene, that it might not look like anything special, but anyone that knows for there to be waves and not one car or person is like in the middle of the day is kind of crazy.
Yeah. We lined up on one shot that same morning.
Yeah, barrel.
Yeah. And people hated me for it.
Those are tough times.
But I love that shot. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, because I mean, action shots they're cool, but would that almost be like more of an art form that you enjoy more so than like someone doing a turn?
No, I definitely enjoy both. It's probably like choosing which is your favorite child. Oh, no, I enjoy both differently. And that actually goes for, I would separate like shortboarding and longboarding as far as shooting, because I feel like longboarding is more of an art form and everything moves slower and it's just a totally different dynamic than like a hurricane swell, which honestly, there's less people in the water. I might enjoy it more, but typically you're like not trying to get ran over and killed and get other people in the shot and get the shot, and there's kind of a million things going on at once. But yeah, I enjoy everything equally. It's all thrown in the pot that balances everything out.
How many people only know you by FollyHood and don't know your name's Justin?
That was like a couple of years ago. I changed it. I think I changed my Facebook to FollyHood by Justin Morris, and I don't know why, because it really doesn't matter. And a lot of people, even if they might know my name, that don't know me that well, they're like, "Hey, you're the FollyHood guy," and I get that all the time. Like I get it out. I got it out in the water today when I was taking photos, and literally, if I have a camera, even if I don't, a lot of people might recognize me and ask me if I'm the FollyHood guy and just say what's up. Which is cool. But yeah, it's weird that it's kind of morphed into what it was. I don't think I ever thought when I started this
You could change your name.
Yeah, or whatever.
Because, I mean, I am guilty of it.
Yeah.
And like Chris Kemp, I literally call him C Kemp. I cannot get that out of my head.
Pong. I know who's on the podcast, Big Pong. I feel like Big Pong whenever I see her out in the water.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of just become like this brand / photography / whatever thing. So yeah, I get that a lot, but yeah, it's funny to me.
Yeah. Who are some of the people that you feel like you always seem to line up with? Is there someone that just is like your magic? It seems that you always come away with some type of image.
So Kate Berrettini for sure. And we just got a shot yesterday. We were talking about a nice nose ride at the pier, super perch, like boards in the pocket, super steep section. It was really nice. And that might just be because I shoot with her a lot because she's a good friend. But beyond that, I mean, there's a wide range of, I would say, shortboarders who can be out there at any given time. And obviously I'm like pulling to get good shots of people I know or know well or surf well and all that. And there's obviously a lot of guys around here that surf well. So there's kind of no rhyme or reason sometimes. And it's unfortunate because it could be like, this guy got a really nice barrel and I just missed it or something happened. And sometimes it just lines up with someone else. But honestly, you try and think like over the years, if you keep shooting, keep showing up, that you're going to get that shot for this person who rips and, line up with them sooner or later.
So say there's a good day of waves. How blown up do you get the next day or that night because you say, I mean, everyone's guilty of it. Especially if you line up with you in the water or any photographer, like, are you just getting blown up?
For sure. And honestly, I hate to say it, but sometimes I won't pick up my camera in the water. I don't know. I used to shoot very loose and I still try, and I think Morgan Masson or someone said it back in the day that I heard, where it was shoot loose and edit tight. And I still kind of try and go by that because in the grand scheme of things, it is nice to have more options. But on the other hand, it's like when you go through like thousands of photos from a good day, it can be tough. But yeah, I'll get a lot of messages and it's like, hey, I thought I saw you or something like that. And I've kind of come to saying the best way that I've found to like tell them, I was like, what were you wearing? What were you riding? And then time's huge. That's why I try and keep like my time correct on my camera. So if someone tells me like it was like 9:45 or 8:30 or something, I'm like, all right, well, at least I have like a little range that I could kind of check, but it's pretty hard. And I mean, I've definitely had people reach out and I found photos and got them to them. But yeah, it can be a little daunting too.
Well, I think everyone listening should give Justin money every time for photos because, just throwing that out there, putting in work,
I appreciate it. And definitely people who've thrown me money tend to get more shots.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it is cool that you've given back that much of like memories, people, and some pretty iconic shots.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't shoot. I enjoy getting money, but if I'm out there, especially on a hurricane day, I mean, I'm just trying to document it and capture good surfing and capture or give my take on it. But yeah, if I'm giving photos of people and stuff, especially nowadays with Venmo, like just Venmo over whatever you can. I know some of the, some are students, some are whatever. So I don't want to say you have to give me X amount of money for whatever, but I'll just tell people whatever they're comfortable giving me.
It does take time.
Oh, for sure. Like editing photos, shooting's really easy, but I'm sure y'all know editing sucks.
Yeah, we edit this podcast, and I'm like, why am I doing it?
Yeah, I could sit out there and take thousands of photos. It's super easy, but then to like go through them and cull them and process them and all that, that's not fun. I don't know. Sometimes I like have a couple photos in mind, especially shooting in the water. That's honestly one of the most exciting things about shooting in the water because I can't really see them. I get like a little blip of them in the water, so you kind of aren't sure exactly what you have. So it is exciting to put them on your computer, but shooting on the beach and stuff, I'm looking at everything, so it's not that exciting to then see it on the computer.
Yeah, that is. What about your evolution of shooting? How much I know a lot of people not struggle. I mean, yeah, maybe struggle, but like imposter syndrome, it's definitely a thing. Especially with seeing everybody post their best stuff and you're like different locations, but how have you dealt with that?
I mean, I think that I have developed a kind of style, whether it's like, it's kind of a contrasty and good light and kind of, there's definitely a mood, I think, to how I like to shoot and how I like to edit. And I think that's kind of just happened over time. As far as like imposter syndrome, that kind of stuff, it's tough because like you go on Instagram all the time and you're sitting there and you're like, you think you got a cool shot. And then you see this like crazy shot from like Hawaii or some island. You're just like, how can I compete with this? But I mean, there's a place for everyone, and just, I don't know, I try not to be too critical and just, again, like wherever I'm at, just try and document it the way I see it. And, I think that's the best thing. Honestly, when I've gone to traveling, especially Mexico, like for some of these longboard contests, and you'll have like, now the last one I went to, there's like 20 world-class photographers around. And it is interesting to see how 20 people document the same thing. And that could be putting an ND filter on, like something in the middle of the day to get the speed, get blur or slower shutter, or, just everyone's own little twist. But yeah, I think you just kind of keep shooting what I enjoy shooting and try and make it work.
Yeah. What are I know Mexico, or there are other locations that either you love shooting at or you want to go to?
That's a long list. Oh man, dream trip would definitely be like New Zealand, Australia. I don't know if that's because I just heard that in the podcast. And then I also have a dream trip would be, I think, to do why am I drawing a blank? France, Spain, Portugal. That whole trip, I think it'd be really rad to do a van trip and do it in the fall when it's kind of pumping over there. And I haven't been to Portugal, but I've been to the other countries. And yeah, I'd like to go back like on a surf focused trip. Yeah. And then Alaska, I found these people on Instagram, Alaska surf something, but yeah, it's like you can go snowboarding and surfing the same day. And yeah, some of these cold water trips kind of seem pretty epic too. It just seems like they're kind of tough to get to.
Yeah. What about your trip? So your trip across the country, like in the fastest time, what is it called?
So it was basically, everyone calls it against world record. I think because when we were kids, you had the book, and that was just what world record to be. But Guinness doesn't sponsor this because I think they don't want to promote speeding on roads or whatever. So it's just its own like world record for visiting all 50 states. So Thomas Cannon, who I used to work with at Ocean a while back, hit me up, and he was like, hey, he actually gave me minimum details. Basically, he's like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing a trip. He developed this like algorithm for the quickest way to go see all 50 states. And I was like, man, that sounds terrible, but I would love to do it. I don't know, I'm kind of a glutton for punishment. But and we got to spend, so the trip started with 3 nights and 4 days in Hawaii. And I've never been to Hawaii before. Actually, I can give you a story here. So I've never been to Hawaii before. So I was like, even if the trip is terrible and we spent 4 days straight in a car, like no joke, from Seattle to Vermont, zigzag. And it was like, honestly, it wasn't that bad, but I don't know how I did it also.
Wait, you said your back was...
It was like, I have a bad back, so I was definitely like a little wigged out. And we were supposed to take a Sprinter van, Chad Davis's old van, that broke down on the way out there. So I literally got off the plane. We went from Hawaii to Alaska to Seattle, and I got off the plane and walked outside and didn't know what we were getting into for the next 4 days. It ended up being a minivan, which was fine. I was a little worried that I couldn't stand up. But yeah, so that trip started. We got to go to Hawaii in April, so it's kind of like a shoulder season. But I was so pumped to go there, and this is during COVID. And I get there in the airport, and you have to show, they were pretty strict about COVID stuff. So I get there, and I'm showing them my paperwork, and the girl's like, this is the wrong test. And I was like, what do you mean? I might have cried, like there might have been a tear. I was just like, what do you mean? I'm like, this is the whole point of this trip. Like, this is like the fun part of the not driving all day, every day. So basically I guess I think they had wristbands, and I didn't get a wristband. So I'm like freaking out at the airport. What am I doing? And I end up just kind of doing whatever I wanted to do this trip. And I was all wigged out at first, like that I was going to get caught, but it ended up being fine. It was funny too. When we were flying out, I like hid all my photos. Because I was like, what if they check my phone? And then I'm like, man, I got like a little sunbird. So I like had a story. But
So
yeah,
you weren't supposed to...
I wasn't supposed to leave the hotel room for 2 weeks. That was like, you were in like
yeah.
whatever. So they're like, we'll let you in, but you have to stay in your hotel room. And they honestly, the first day or second day, I got a text randomly, and it said, are you in the hotel room? And I actually was. So I was like, yes, I'm here. But I was all the way down. I like turned off all my locations, like nobody can track where I was.
And but you weren't even like you just didn't have the right test.
Yeah, the wrong.
That's
I don't
crazy.
even remember what it was. It was just the wrong test. It was like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like the fraud, like the swab or one. I don't know. And I had the wrong one.
So what was y'all's time, and y'all hit the record?
So we did break the record. It has since been broken. So we are the second fastest people to go to all 50 states, which is still, it's kind of a fun fact, like a little bar trivia type thing, which I forget about sometimes. But we did it in 5 days, 16 hours, and maybe 20 minutes ish. But yeah, so the first like day and 16 hours, I guess, was basically once we left Hawaii, like wheels up, the time started. And then we also got to Anchorage at like 5:30 in the morning. And this was like another plus, was we got to go to Anchorage for basically a half day, and we rent a car. So we get there and it was still dark out, and I was pretty happy about having a half day there, even though I think we could definitely cut some hours off of the record. But yeah, we rented a car and drove south and saw a sunrise on the Seaward Highway, and it was like the most epic thing. So I'm like, that alone was worth being in Alaska for like, it was like one of those, like every single corner you turn, you're just like, this is unreal. Like massive mountains and beautiful sunrise and like ice like floating by and stuff. It's kind of crazy.
Epic. A lot of like, anytime you have a camera, like for me, if I have a camera anywhere in the world, there's always gearheads that are, what are you shooting on? What lens is that? And like all the specs. And half the time I don't even know. I'm more in it for like creating an edit that gives a feeling or a shot or something like that. I don't care what it's on. What is your take on gear versus?
So I'm not a gearhead either. I'm definitely like super elementary, and that's just kind of my style. I definitely don't have the nicest and newest things. And yeah, I just think, again, like some cameras can obviously help in certain ways. My camera is a full frame camera, so that's good in low light conditions. And I think that is a benefit. But a lot of stuff, again, is just like kind of your vision. And, you know, there's a lot of people putting out quality content, and it's definitely, you know, can't think of the word, definitely possible. You know, you don't need $10,000 worth of gear to tell a good story or take a good photo. You know, I don't think it's that important. Your vision's worth more than, you know, whatever camera's in your hand. You can kind of compare it to like a kitchen. You're like, just because you have the nicest oven in the world and this awesome, like, brand new kitchen doesn't mean you know how to cook all of a sudden. You kind of have to know how to use your equipment. I think being familiar with your gear is more important than what gear you're using.
Yeah, I got this new camera one time and posted, and I was like so excited to see where this camera takes me. And then Peter King commented and was like, that camera's not going to take you anywhere. It's what you do with it. And that also stuck with me.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, just shoot. Like I had people reach out saying, what can I do? And honestly, just shoot, just keep shooting. Don't worry about gear. That stuff will come in, you know, fall into line when time's ready. And honestly, just shooting is more important, and like developing your style and telling your story is more important than like, oh, like I have to have the nicest gear first and then I'll start, you know, making it happen. It's just make it happen with what you have. And if anything, you'll look back and be like, man, those were really shitty photos. But like, I'm glad I'm evolving, and like my editing's gotten better, and my photo telling or my photography's gotten better, and just, you know, every element has gotten better and improved, and honestly will continue to improve. Like it never ends.
Yeah. This is like kind of contradicting what I just said, but like I feel like once drones got to a point where they're not that expensive, but I feel like that opened up a whole new world for you and a lot of us.
Yeah, honestly, I have to look back. It's on the blog, but I had my girlfriend at the time got me a Groupon to go on a helicopter ride. So I was like, this is awesome. Like, I'm going to go on the helicopter ride and I'm going to shoot surf. So that was like super stressful, you know, trying to like coordinate when we actually have waves. And then like I had to go up to North Charleston to basically go and then fly back out to the beach. But I was really pumped. I get there and the guy's like, yeah, you have a Groupon for like 30 minutes. And I was like, he's like, basically we'd go to Folly and turn around. So I was like, damn it. So I paid more and we did like a couple laps. But yeah, this was me. It was actually really rad. It's the only time I've been in a helicopter, and you're like strapped in and like shooting over the edge. So you like, at the time it seemed like a really dynamic thing and angle, but now like with a drone, I mean, I fly my drone, but yeah, everyone kind of has that angle now.
That's still, I know what photos remember those, but they look different.
Yeah,
than
there's a couple good ones, like, yeah, a couple of good. I remember the approach to Folly was kind of cool, just from way back, like behind James Island, the marsh, and have like lines. And yeah, it's different, I guess. Like you can go higher than you would in a drone, but yeah, the time it was really rad. But now with the drone, like you see a lot of these angles and views are a little more regular now. But yeah, I love my little drone. I have a Mavic Air 2, and yeah, it's awesome. Even the first time taking it up, it just makes like a spot you're super familiar with become like different, which is nice. So it kind of keeps things fresh.
Yeah. We got on drones a while ago, and it was before they were good. And so we've lost like 3 of them. One time was at Forest Block and like an epic sunset. And I'm like way up there. I'm like, this is going to be so cool. And it just disappeared in my eyesight. And we searched all over for it. I was like, maybe it dropped at like 6 Block or something. Never found it. Yeah. So if anyone's out there, it's a white.
That's a drone. I'm sure there's a lot of drones.
Yeah, if it landed in your yard, a white drone, like there's a really good sunset on there.
Yeah, I feel like I honestly fly pretty cautiously.
I do too. Well, no.
Well, besides this couple times you haven't. No, like I've done a couple of sketchy, like out to Morris Islands. I've done a couple of sketchy where I'm like trying to chase shrimp boats down like at sunset, and I'm like ripping out there, and I'm like, man, this thing is a lot further than I thought. And then I'm like, at some point, I'm just like, I'm just gonna turn around.
Flying over water makes my legs shake so fast. Yeah.
I remember, I feel like when I got the drone, you were living around the corner, and I was just like, it's actually crazy. Like, you just get a drone. There's no directions. There's no anything. I'm like, what do I do? So I'm like on YouTube being like, how to operate a drone, the basic things to know, like not even operating, but like all that. Just like, how do you turn it on? How do you take a photo? Like all the stuff. I'm like, because it kind of doesn't come with anything. You just get the drone. But yeah, again, so I started like small. James Island, I went out to a soccer field and just like flew around where I can see it. But yeah, it is still a little sketchy going over water.
No, so Look to the Tropics, second movie, I'm like, let's elevate. It was before drones. I was like, dude, I've got a sick idea. I'm going to hire the parasailing guy and get drone looking shots. And I went up there in a water housing because I took the parasail out. We went up and I got so seasick up there. And like immediately, it was really choppy. The guy bullied us into taking it out. We were like, I don't know. And he's like, kept calling. And I'm up there about to throw up. And I'm like waving, like, bring me down. And they're like thinking I'm getting good stuff. And it was before image stabilization was really on my camera. So I get back and it's
unusable.
It's unusable. I warp stabilized one shot and I think it's in the movie. And that's from a parasail. And it was the kookiest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, you had to get creative to get like different angles. I don't know. I feel like that's still always searching for a new angle, whether it's like parasail or just whatever.
Oh man, like there's a photo of that. That was brutal.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was brutal. I was thinking about that. I know we were just talking about how all swells kind of start to blend together. And it's hard to even remember what name coincided with what swell. Are there any that stick out, whether you know the name or not, but like when the conditions were heaviest or around here?
They just all blend together. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I remember Irene, I guess, because I had just moved out to the beach and just started that was when I just started the blog, like maybe 2010-ish. And yeah, I just remember I was sitting on my porch. I was on the 8th block, and it was one of those where like the wind switches late in the day. And all of a sudden I'm just like seeing boards and seeing all this stuff. And I was probably drinking some beers or messing around. And then, yeah, I was like, man, I should go. So I went down and had my shitty little old camera. I don't even remember what it was. It was like not long enough lens. It was like the entry kit lens. But yeah, that's honestly one of the best I've ever seen the pier. It was like probably double overhead, maybe bigger. And yeah, I got some terrible shots. Or looking back, I think they're not great. But yeah, some really big surf. I forgot who was out there. I know Paul Martin was on a longboard catching some big waves, and there's a couple other guys. But yeah, that's probably one of the bigger days I've seen on Folly where it's actually surfable, not just like big. And yeah, basically my prep for a hurricane, especially nowadays, is one, to just not believe any hype. I go into it like until it's like that day or even like the day before, I still like, I just don't believe anything until you see it, especially with hurricanes, because you kind of never know. Like it could, go totally different direction, good or bad. But yeah, like hurricane hype is tough. Like I know it's fun to get like hyped up and there's storms, but it's just like there's so many different things that can happen that I try not to like get in my own head about it and like think, oh, I gotta be doing this and I have to be prepared to do this. Honestly, it's more like now just like clear memory cards, have batteries, and like see what happens and try and avoid like crazy busy places. But that's tough to do sometimes. But
well, now it seems like the hurricane prep is this thing actually going to hit us? And like now they're so stressful that oh no,
that's the whole yeah, it's like, is it going to hit us is like, yeah,
then like
kind of more important than like, are there going to be waves today?
I used to only care about the waves now, and then now you get older and I'm like, dang, this is stressful, like
becoming an adult. Yeah, honestly, I just try not to look in like, by the hype. It can be very stressful if you're sitting there like stressing about it. So just like kind of relax and see what happens.
Yeah, what other ways could people support you? Like shooting other things, going on trips, sessions?
Yeah, I shoot. Honestly, I shoot other stuff, like anything from family photos to real estate to some other stuff. But yeah, special sessions. I don't like doing it when I have people that's like going back to the hurricane. It's like hurricane so-and-so is coming and surf lines overhyping it, and Saturday is going to be overhead and perfect. And then someone's like, hey, can you come shoot me at like on the west side with my brother in town? I'm like, no, man, like I'm gonna go. Honestly, those days for me, I'd rather go shoot where there's the most like tight group of good surfers or people where I can get a lot of shots and a lot of good shots. So yeah, if someone wanted to reach out to surf, maybe don't pick like the best day, but just like an average, or I don't know. Like,
yeah, there's special days in surfing all the time, like good mornings that like are way more fun than most hype days anyway.
Yeah. Again, it doesn't have to be like the epic hurricane day. It can be just a nice sunrise with like a thigh stomach high day, and you're out with all your buddies. But yeah, I've definitely shot some private sessions like that, and I haven't gone on a trip in a while, but definitely had a nice little run where I got to go on some trips. Worked out different stuff for that, whether basically I wasn't making money, but I was going on a trip. So I'd always prefer, if someone's offering me to travel, I'm always down.
Yeah. What does the future hold for you of like any aspirations in photography or just life?
Oh, it's a tough question. I feel like I'm at like a family meeting.
What do you want to do with
Yeah, I've been hearing that for a long time. Oh, no, honestly, just continue to shoot, continue to improve on every single level, whether that be photography or the back end of photography. Honestly, like, I'm still learning every day, and I think a lot of photography and work, I'm sure y'all get it, but it's not like going out and taking photos. It's the whole back end. So yeah, just getting better at that, being more consistent, and just continuing to improve and document everything. And I don't know, I've thought about I've had a lot of people come and say I should do a book, but I kind of feel like I'm not worthy, if that makes sense. Like, I just kind of want to, I don't know. I'm like,
Yeah.
keep waiting and like stacking photos and time goes by. But yeah, I've had people, I'm like, oh, I don't know whether you should, I don't know if I'm just talking myself out of it.
There's always a time for that.
Yeah, but it's definitely something that I've thought about, and maybe somewhere down the road, be cool to kind of put out something that'll last forever, and that you can have like on your coffee table, that's like kind of surfer journal, well made, and it doesn't have to be like the sickest barrel or whatever, just like a nice representation of what I see in Folly, and just like, what I've seen over the years, and subtle changes and special days, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for the shots I've gotten over the years. And thanks for coming on. And yeah, we'll see you out in the water.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. And also want to shout out y'all, Thomas Brothers, for doing this. And I feel like the community really is going to enjoy this, and it's going to bring a lot of people together. And yeah, I'm stoked y'all are doing it and doing it well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, all the story, we listen to stories from like pros or, so much in California and Hawaii, but there's so many interesting people here, and so it's cool to hear these stories and be able to share them with everyone.
Yeah, we might not have the best waves in the world, but we have a pretty good surf community here.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool.
Phew.